So 1 week ago, we officially launched the Extendo-VENT, which is basically this invention that allows you to replace any existing vent for your heater or AC with an extendable version so that you can redirect the air to wherever you want it to go. And today I'm going to tell you guys how to actually install it. We're going to cover a few different topics. The first one being the compatibility of the Extendo-VENT, and then the overview of all the parts that come in the kit. Then we're actually going to talk about how to do the installation. Although I have my Extendo-VENT mounted to the metal underbelly of my passenger seat here in my camper van, there are a ton more places that the Extendo-VENT is compatible with mounting with. You can literally mount it to any cabinet like the ones that I have here. You can see my other vents for my heat and AC. When I make the AC version of the Extendo-VENT, it's gonna go right there in this wooden cabinet. So there are two requirements if you want to be able to mount the Extendo-VENT in place of a regular vent. Requirement number one is you need enough surface area to mount this vent flange here. For the 3-inch version of the Extendo-VENT here, it is a 5-inch by 5-inch amount of surface you need to mount it. And then requirement number two is you need a little bit more area to lay the hose. The diesel heater that I have uses about a 2-inch hose normally, and the Extendo-VENT duct housing is about 4.5 inches in outside diameter. I really mean it when I say that the Extendo-VENT should work with basically every single diesel heater or air conditioner that exists in a camper, boat, or overlanding vehicle. Overall, this installation is really simple. I've broken it down into 3 steps. Step number 1, drill the big hole for the vent to sit into. Step number 2, mount the vent flange using the mounting screws. And then step number 3 is connecting all of the ductwork with the included hose clamps. So when you get one of these Extendo ducts in the mail, it's gonna look exactly like this, with the compressible duct on the inside. And then you're also gonna get this baggie of goodies. I'll show you guys how to install all this. Today we're gonna be installing it on a cardboard box because the way that I had it installed in my van, I tried it 50 different times while I was developing this and it wasn't the best tutorial. Cardboard box is a clean slate. Okay, so step number 1 is gonna be to drill the big hole that we put the vent into. This is the 3-inch version of the Extendo-VENT. I am using a 4-inch hole saw bit here. You can buy these at your local hardware store, or I'll put a link to a 4-inch hole saw bit that I recommend in the description below. And for this step, there is a 1A and a 1B. The 1A is if you don't have a vent installed yet, it's a fresh install, you don't have an existing heater or air conditioner, and you're drilling a brand new hole. Step 1B is if you're upgrading an existing vent. Okay, so step 1A, fresh installation. There's obviously no holes drilled on this surface yet. Let's say I want to put it in the top corner. I want to make sure that I have 5 inches by 5 inches of space or more. So I'm going to put it about right there where you guys see that little mark that I put. And all we have to do at this point is drill a hole saw. Just like that. Best part about drilling hole saws is you're left with a hole saw cookie afterwards. So now for step 1B, we're assuming that you already have a vent installed from a previous installation and you want to upgrade this regular old dusty vent to a modern, super cool Extendo-VENT. In fact, I don't know why the heck they even made these things to begin with. So in this case here, we have the factory S-bar vent that comes with the S-bar S2 heater kit. what we're gonna do first is uninstall that and yeet it across the room. Never gonna need that thing again. Then you wanna cut out a piece of scrap wood or scrap metal. And the idea here is that we're preparing this scrap piece of hopefully wood or metal to become the guide that we use to drill the new hole with our bigger hole saw bit, since we have to upgrade it from the previous smaller one. So you wanna take your scrap piece and then you wanna take your extendo-vent flange. You wanna set the vent flange so that it is flush with your scrap piece, and you just want to mark the mounting holes on the scrap piece itself. I'm using a Sharpie. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to take those 4 mounting holes that we marked and we're going to drill them out with a 7/64 drill bit. It happens to be the perfect size for the number 8 stainless steel screws that I use in the kit so that you can mount the vent later. So now your piece of scrap should look like this with 4 holes in it. So now the next part is a little bit tricky, but we basically need to get this hole saw into the center of the holes that we just drill so that the outer edges of the hole saw bit are equidistant from each of these 4 points that we drilled through. To be honest, I think the best way to do this is just to eye it. So what I'm doing is I'm looking here at the outside edges of the hole saw bit. So once you have your hole saw bit in the center of the template here, you just want to trace out the middle hole so that when you remove the hole saw bit, you can see the center hole. At this point, you just want to eye it again and mark in the very center of that hole. And that is another place where you want to take that 7/64 drill bit. It actually doesn't matter exactly what size this one is, but you want it to be pretty small, and you want to drill out that little tiny dot. Now mine looks like this. So the idea here at this point is you want to take this templated guide and attach it to the back. So I forgot to film this step, filling in the gap now. In order to mount this template on the back, which we're about to do, we need to mark the holes that we're going to drill through. We're going to use this to mark the same holes, but this time we're doing it on the surface of the cardboard wherever we want to mount the vent. And you want to press the template up against the surface that you're trying to mount it to. You can use a clamp here if you need to. Just make sure not to put your fingers where the screw is going to come through the backside or else you'll poke them. Now we got to do the same thing with the next 3 screws. Make sure the holes are lined up here. Okay, turns out I need to cut some of the edges off of this template because I can't get it tucked into this corner where I need it to be. So now we have the exact same template with just less material around the outside of the mounting holes. Now we've got this thing mounted. So we are finally at the point here where we have a hole right in the center that we can use as a guide. Okay, so we have the hole that we've drilled out that's still stuck in our hole saw bit. So all we need to do now is remove the template from the backside and we are on to the easy stuff. We've taken the template out. It is no longer of use to us. We can also yeet that thing across the room. And we have our vent flange, which goes into the hole. And the vent flange can now be effectively permanently mounted to the hole that we just drilled. Coming at you from the future here, if you do mess this step up and the holes don't line up perfectly after you stick your vent in, it's not a big deal, guys. Look at this right here. The holes are messed up. All I got to do is rotate the vent to a different position and you can just drill new mounting holes that do line up this time. Very important note here that I almost forgot to include. If you just drilled holes into a steel surface. And this does not matter at all for wood. You have to rust protect the surfaces that you just exposed. My preference is to use this stuff. It's Rust-Oleum spray paint. You can find this at your local hardware store, but I will try to put a link to it in the description below if it's possible to buy this stuff online. I like to use this particular spray paint because it dries super, super fast. So what I do is I spray the spray paint into a cup like this, and then I use a little paintbrush and I paint the spray paint onto the edges of the circle so that it's nice and clean and you can't see it when the thing is finally done being installed. At this point, in order to install the Extendo-Vent, you gotta disassemble it a little bit from how it came packaged and shipped to you. So we're going to pull off the duct housing all the way off the back side here. Set that one aside. And then at this stage, we're actually going to take the vent housing out from the ball vent and just slide that all the way off the back as well. You can set this aside. So now we have our vent flange, and we're gonna move on to mounting this vent flange onto the big hole that we just drilled. This one is very simple. All that you have to do is stick the vent flange into the hole. It will self-center in that hole because of the way that the vent flange is engineered. You hold it in place and you just mark each of the 4 mounting hole locations with a Sharpie. It doesn't really matter how this thing is oriented, but if you have a preference on the direction of the mounting holes, that's up to you. You're going to take a 7/64 inch drill bit, which is the perfect size drill bit for the number 8 stainless steel mounting screws that I have included in the kit. And we're going to pre-drill holes for each of the 4 locations. And then at this point, we're going to take our 4 mounting screws and we're going to mount the vent flange. And now we have our vent flange mounted, which is by far the hardest step of this whole installation process. And we can move on to connecting the ducting. First thing you're gonna do is you're gonna take the flexible duct with the ball vent on the tip. You're gonna take the back side of that duct and start threading it through the vent hole. Then you can just twist to lock that vent in place there. Duct housing with the hose clamp loosely installed on the end of it. We are going to thread that onto the back side of the flexible duct here, just like this. All we need to do now is tighten it down so that the duct housing does not come off. Okay, I have it fairly tight, but I could definitely tighten this way, way more. That being said, just due to the nature of the friction between the 2 materials, it is on there real good. Like I could yeet this thing and it would just not come off at all. So we're good to go tightening this duct. Now for a pretty custom part of the installation that's really going to depend on your particular place that you have this thing installed. But what we're doing here is basically just installing the tail end of the flexible duct onto wherever the output of the air is coming from. You can do that with the included small clamp. You basically just slide the small clamp onto the outside of this duct and you tighten it down onto wherever the air is coming from. If your Extendo-Vent is like within, like 24 inches or so of your heater itself or air conditioner, you can just directly install the compressible duct onto the output of that device. Or in a lot of cases, I think you're gonna have the Extendo-Vent installed like in the top part of a cabinet and the heater air conditioners all the way at the bottom. So you'll have some normal duct running all the way up to wherever 24 inches away from your extendo vent is, and then you want to install the compressible duct there. Wherever you install the end of this compressible duct, you want it to be as close as possible, if not actually inside of the duct housing, because however far away you install the end of this hose, you're going to get 8 feet of extension from here. Very final step here. This funny looking little doohickey that we have is actually used to help mount the duct housing so that it just stays in one place and makes the extendo vent a bit smoother to use. So all we do is basically take the backing off of the tape here, and then we're going to kind of figure out where we want the duct to be. We're going to angle the housing whichever direction is kind of natural for the duct to be sitting, and we're going to stick it on just like that. Make sure to apply some good pressure and hold it for a few seconds. And then after that, we could just take our duct housing, slot it into the nice little cradle, and tighten down our stainless steel zip ties. And then if you want this to look really good at the end of the day, you can take the zip ties, rotate them around, and then insert the tip of the zip tie back into the hole that the zip tie is coming out of, like that. As you can see here, it just cradles the outside of the duct housing perfectly because we engineered it ourselves. And now your duct housing really doesn't move around too much at all. You have a nice experience when you want to pull the duct out here and push it back in. It just tends to slide a little bit smoother when this duct housing stays in one place. So at this point, we have our extendo vent fully installed into our cardboard cabinet here, and it's looking a little rough. I don't think cardboard is the best material to build your cabinets out of, but hopefully it was functional enough to provide a good demo of how to install this. I do believe if I were to demo it to you guys right now, it's just gonna fall apart. Well, let's try extendo vent. It actually kind of worked. Okay, if you do have any questions, please put them in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.